Joshua Tree National Park is jam-packed full of awesome hiking trails. One of the really neat ones that we got to do on our last visit is the Desert Queen Mine 2 Eagle Cliff Boulder House. To get to this one, you will need to drive down a pretty long dirt road, but it is pretty well maintained, so you shouldn't need high clearance to get there. Soon you should be arriving at a decent sized parking lot. But this parking lot can get filled up because there are 3 trailheads here. There are a whole bunch of mines located along this trail. Most of them are sealed off, but even if they aren't, it's important that you don't go in. Not only is it very dangerous, but we need to protect the bats as well. As far as the stats go, this trail is 4 miles long round trip with 656 feet of elevation gain. So the trail does have a loop in it. It's about 1/10 of a mile into the hike. I believe we are going to go this way first, and then we are going to come back on this trail right here, and then go to the car. We continued a little further down the trail, and that's where we came to another junction. Here we turned right, and this is where we came to our first abandoned structure. We worked really hard to find some information about these ruins, but unfortunately we came up empty-handed. If you happen to know anything about the history of these structures, please feel free to let us know in the comments below. It's amazing how much history is located here in Joshua Tree National Park, and this hike kind of reminded us of the Wall Street Mill Trail. If you haven't seen that one, you can see it by clicking in the upper corner. Unlike the Wall Street Mill hike, which is quite easy, this one definitely takes a little bit more skill. The trail here is quite a bit rockier. There are no shortage of tripping hazards, and you need some grippy shoes to help you go up and down all the hills. You're eventually going to be coming to another fork, and you need to turn left here. One thing that we've already noticed is that this trail gets pretty faint at times. Some wayfinding skills are definitely going to be needed here, and we already loaded the trail into our inReach, so we have that as a nice guide for ourselves. I would definitely recommend bringing something like that because it would probably get a little bit easy to get lost out here. Besides the sign about the mines and the bats, there are no directional signs out here. At the bare minimum, we highly recommend that you use something like Strava to keep track of where you're going so you can find your way back safely. We have now come to a sandy wash, and we're going to make our way directly across it to continue on the trail. The trail will be curving off to the left, and this is where you will be starting the first of 2 decent climbs along this trail. Keep your eyes peeled because there are going to be more artifacts from old mining operations along the way. And this is also where you're going to start seeing a lot of mine shafts directly off the trail. As a reminder, once again, you're supposed to stay out of these mine shafts, and we did. We just stuck the camera through this small gap so everyone could see what it looked like. Fun fact, mining was a very popular thing to do out here starting way back in the 1870s. The miners out here were looking for gold, silver, and quartz. And over the course of the time that mining was allowed out here, miners started 300 mining sites with 720 mine openings. It's pretty cool that the park decided to leave some of the artifacts out here, like this old Chicago pneumatic machine. I believe that it is some sort of pump, but if I'm mistaken, please feel free to correct me in the comments below. You will be continuing to climb all the way up to the very top of the hill. But if you need to stop and take a breath, there are several other mine shafts along the way, so you can stop and look at them. I'm not gonna lie, these climbs are no joke. While it may not be as steep and perilous as the ones that we did on Moapa Peak, which you can see by clicking in the upper corner, it's just steep enough, and those little rocks can make things really slippery at times, so please be careful. We had now reached the top of the first climb, and as I mentioned before, we needed to figure out which way to go because the trail had kind of disappeared. There was a pretty faint fork here, and the GPX was telling us that we needed to go right, but we were also curious on what was off to the left, so we decided to check that out first. There isn't a whole ton to see off to the left, it's mainly a bunch more mine shafts and a view that stretches out over the valley. There isn't a ton to see here, and soon we were back on the main trail again. There is another small climb here that weaves its way through all of the vertical mine shafts, and soon you'll be heading towards that large boulder on the right. Another thing that you need to watch out for out here is snakes, of course, and tons of pokey plants. It seems like almost every time we visit the park, V and I get poked by either a yucca or a cholla cactus at least once. When you get to the large boulder, you'll be able to see these really cool veins in the rocks. V and I are not geologists, but we are super fascinated by why they do that, so if you know, please feel free to let us know in the comments below. We are going to be getting back to climbing, but this one is much more mellow than that first climb you did just a second ago. At this point, we are about 0.8 of a mile into the hike, and most of the hard parts are behind us. There is still one pretty stout climb coming up ahead though. The trail is going to be getting even prettier at this point as we head towards hillsides that are covered in massive boulders. And there was also this section that had a bunch of really creepy looking trees on it. This is definitely a spot to stop if you're into landscape photography. Watch out because there are even more pokey plants on this part of the trail. But one of the good things is that you will be getting a small break from climbing because the trail is going to start dropping down again. Since this trail is kind of hard to figure out, it is extremely important that you bring more water than you think you're going to need. If you get turned around, you could be out here for a second. And even though there are some caves to give you some shade and shelter, this is a pretty unforgiving environment. We have now started on the last significant climb of this trail. I believe that it is a little bit steeper than the first one, and it's also more technical as well. You can expect to gain about 300 feet of elevation over the course of the climb. While you're climbing, there will be this cool rocky ridge on your left. It kind of reminded us of the formation that we call the spine on the Arch Rock Trail. If you haven't seen that video, you can see it by clicking in the upper corner. There are going to be a couple of small Class 2 scrambles up towards the top of the climb. It's nothing too technical at all, but it will be putting those grippy shoes to use. It feels like this climb goes on for a small eternity, but that could just be because we did Ryan Mountain the day before this. That hike is a solid workout, and if you haven't seen that video yet, you can see it by clicking in the upper corner. Finally, we reached the top, and we once again had to put those wayfinding skills to work.
After a breathtaking, literally, scramble up that hill, we have come to this junction. I think this is the last junction of the hike. You'll know you're there when you see this short cave. Making a right here will take you on a whole separate trail. It's a big loop. Don't think we have time for that today. Going left, even though it doesn't look like much, I believe this is the way we want to go. It's going to kind of wrap around the backside of that tree.
At this point, you are almost there. You only have about 0.2 of a mile left, and it is all downhill. As you start to drop down into the valley, you really need to start looking for the boulder house, because unless you know what you're looking for, it's very hard to find. We can't promise that it will always be there, but if you see this large boulder that looks like it's being held up by a stick, that's where the boulder house is. Unfortunately, this is another spot that we don't have a ton of information about. We don't know who built it, when it was built, or if the people lived here full time. But one thing is for sure, it's really neat and there are still a ton of artifacts here. The whole place is packed full of neatly arranged cans and jars and pans. And aside from the rust that is all over the cans and has eaten through the bottom of the pans, the place is still nice and tidy and it looks like someone very well could still live here. We even managed to find this crate that still had some markings on it. It appears to say Hams, Los Angeles, California on it. I did a quick Google search, but it didn't turn up anything. I think that one of the main design choices though was that it had this detached bedroom here. It may not have vaulted ceilings, but it probably does a pretty good job of protecting you from the elements. After we took one more second to admire the fancy stonework on the fireplace, we headed outside. There was this cute little exterior wall that I had seen in pictures and I really wanted to find. It turns out that it is tucked away in some bushes, but this is a really cute little spot. And the outside of this little boulder house looks like something straight out of an old Disney cartoon.
I trust the viewers of this channel, but I think that it goes without saying that if you're going to visit places like this, be respectful. Clean up after yourself. Don't be taking all the cool artifacts in there and throwing them around, being all crazy, you know,
Don't touch anything.
Yeah.
Don't write your name on the rocks, or don't carve your name on anything. Or just leave it at is, leave no trace. We really thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because if we're, you know, I think it's part of a responsibility of ours in showcasing these types of adventures that, you know, we try to be good stewards of the environment. So do your part, leave it looking good.
So now we're gonna try to make our fire way home.
Yeah.
Back to the car.
Because we're running out of sunlight.
I see you on.
Even though we were going to be racing the clock, we couldn't help ourselves but to stop and get one quick peek at the valley just behind the boulder house. Stopping here shouldn't take you long at all, but it is a neat little photo op. It's really important that you pay attention to your surroundings on the way in, because much like the way in, route finding skills are going to be very important to get you back to your car. If you enjoy hard to find trails that take you to mysterious historical items, we have another recommendation inside the park. It's called the Samuelson's Rock Trail, and it's pretty unique. On that hike, you'll see where a very interesting guy decided to carve all of his thoughts into large boulders. It must have been the equivalent of social media back in the day, but you can see that video by clicking in the upper corner. Be extremely careful when you're making your way down this steep climb. It gets very slippery and V and I both slipped a few times. One thing is for sure, you are definitely going to want to consider what time of year you decide to attempt this hike. The optimal time to attempt this would be between November and March. We would highly discourage against doing this during the summer months. Even though it's fairly short, the exposure and the lack of marked trails would make this one pretty dangerous. It is said that it takes most people an average of 1 hour and 37 minutes to complete this trail. But if you know anything about us, you know it's going to take a whole lot longer. With all of the photo ops and exploring, it ended up taking us 3 hours and 2 minutes to complete. And honestly, if it wasn't for the quickly approaching sunset, we could have stayed out there a whole lot longer. One of the nice things about this hike is just how much solitude it has to offer. We only saw 2 people on the trail the entire time we were out there. Of course, this means that you are going to have to be really responsible for your own safety because there aren't going to be a lot of people coming down the trail out here. Even though we didn't end up seeing any, this area is known to be inhabited by bighorn sheep. It's estimated that 1 to 200 bighorn sheep call Joshua Tree National Park home, but the big challenge is spotting them because they are very good at blending into their surroundings. We are now back to crossing the wash, and this is where you really need to start paying attention. The trail is once again going to be getting kind of faint, and it's another one of those spots where you could easily get lost.
You may remember that one fork that we came to earlier after we got into that wash. Well, we are back at it, and I figure, what the heck, let's see what all this trail has to offer. We're gonna go the other way.
In all honesty, the other side of the loop didn't really have a ton to offer. The trail on this side is extremely hard to follow, and we ended up just making our way up a wash. I believe that there is a more legitimate trail on the right side that runs along the base of the mountain, but we didn't see it in the moment. Eventually, we did find ourselves back on the trail and things were pretty much smooth sailing. You will be hiking and climbing for just about 0.2 of a mile before you find yourself at that first junction. When you get here, you will want to make a left. Overall, the Desert Queen Mine and Boulder House is such a unique trail and experience. I am so glad that we got to do it, and now it's time to search for more hidden gems in Joshua Tree National Park. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps out the channel. If you have suggestions for future videos, let us know in the comments below. And for all the information about the Desert Queen Mine and Boulder House and other awesome Joshua Tree adventures, head on over to 𝐿𝑖𝐍𝑒𝑇HADventure.com.